If we are one, how do we overcome so much fear and trepidation felt by so many in our world today? We spoke last time about how, even though we are all spiritual beings endowed with an inherent power of manifestation through divine intention, we enter into this 3D existence with an eventual psychic veil of amnesia placed over us. Our birth entry may find us spiritually open, connected, and aware, but over time we start to forget our true divine nature and succumb to the influences of family, culture, circumstances, peer pressure, tribal affiliation, and societal belief systems that may or may not serve us later in life. These forces often become the foundation for our worldview and serve as our framework of understanding as we grow from childhood to adolescence and finally into adulthood as we make our way through the challenges of experiences in life. When we finally become adults who now have to think and reason for ourselves, we're often confronted with old belief systems that may start to feel counter to our innate sense of truth, equity, and humanity. You are, in a spiritual sense, forced to determine what ideas and beliefs you can continue to accept and what no longer makes sense to you or is anathema to your core beliefs and spiritual understanding of self. If we are one, how do we turn these obstacles of belief, often based in fear and bias, into opportunities for growth, expansion, enlightenment, and self-empowerment? How do we internally separate the wheat from the chaff of what is right and wrong to our inherited belief systems and integrate the true makeup of who and what we actually are as spiritual beings who are having human experiences? How do we wake up and remember the truth that is inside of us? Hi, my name is Darrell T. Johnson. I'm a musician, a teacher, and a QHHT hypnosis practitioner. Welcome to episode 3 of If We Are One. Hello everyone. It's great to be back with you again. In this episode, I want to provide you with some insights into the origins of fear and how it translates into the motivations and actions of so many people's worldview. We'll dig deeper into the power of belief and how it serves as a direct catalyst and manifestational mechanism for the law of attraction. We'll also be discussing more about connection between our human mind and our higher self, and how we can establish better communication and clarity between the two. So, if you are ready, let's get started. Often, when people are asked, what is the opposite of love? The response is usually, the opposite of love is hate. But if we dig deeper into this response, we will find out that this answer only holds a partial truth. For while the response to the opposite of love may outpicture as hate, it is by no means the core foundational energy from which it originates. Hate is actually a subset of a much deeper emotion. That deeper emotion, which is the true opposite of love, is in fact fear. This fear may manifest as hate due to perceived threats or feelings of vulnerability or ignorance due to lack of exposure to different cultures and beliefs. These misunderstandings come from the core emotion of fear that create bias, prejudice, discrimination, violence, social division, and yes, hate. It is the fear of what we don't know or understand. It often leads to harmful behaviors such as bullying, harassment, and even hate crimes against individuals or groups perceived as different. Now, this fear from a spiritual perspective is a disconnect from source energy and the forgetting of our innate truth and clarity that we are all one with all that is. These fear-based myopic viewpoints often limit or cut off connection to that loving source energy. This perceptual blindness to our divine mutual connection creates feelings of lack and limitation, creating anxieties and disengagement from our higher self, which can hinder personal growth and spiritual transformation. As we are currently witnessing in the most profound and disturbing ways, different forces in power around the world today are actually using the emotions of fear, coupled with hate, as strategic weapons to sway and control society on a mass scale. They're being used by world political leaders to manipulate public opinion and emotion by exploiting these feelings to unify their base, portraying their opposition as threats. This more often than not leads to an increase in animosity and eventually a breakdown in civil democratic discourse. While this is by no means a new phenomenon, going back eons, and let us not forget my mention in the last episode of the notion that we've all done this before. It has taken on a level of ferocity and sheer blatancy, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. It's as if they've become so emboldened as to not even try to hide how obvious what they're doing is. But their impact and effectiveness will only be as good as the degree to which we, as spiritual beings, allow ourselves to buy into these beliefs. Remember that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that I referenced in episode 1? No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. While I had used that quote to emphasize the importance of the fact that you are worthy, that consent itself is the underpinning of all experiences that we create for ourselves. That consent, whether consciously or unconsciously, forms our beliefs. And as said before, these beliefs serve as a manifestational catalyst for our own unique experience in this world. Remember, as a spiritual being having a human experience, we are actually creating our own reality moment to moment by virtue of what we think and what we believe, and yes, what we may fear. As a result, we manifest outcomes that reinforce the energies of intention that we are transmitting, whether we know it or not. For you see, ignorance is no excuse. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, the practice of magic, such as Wicca, Voodoo, and other forms, is based on a belief in a system, a practice. Its effect can only manifest if you make the choice to align yourself with that belief to create certain effects in your own life. These effects are in reality created out of your own energy, not anything outside of you, that will match the beliefs of that particular practice, that particular buy-in. If you feel that you are being affected, it is because you believe you are affected by someone or something else. Interestingly, If you claim to not buy into it but are still affected, then that suggests that there is some core belief system that you have accepted and are buying into, though that belief may be unconscious to you. This could actually serve as an opportunity of discovery in the belief that you may not have known that you had, so as to address it and see if you wish to continue to buy into it or reject it. Now, I hope you are perhaps picking up on something quite revelatory here. That is, the fact that for any type of magic or any type of influence that may affect you, you must first be introduced to the concept in the first place. A seed must first be planted that suggests the possibility of something being impactful. Then, with effective messaging and frequency of that message, you may or may not internalize the belief. Only then, if you do internalize the belief, can it affect you. You've heard the PR term, control the narrative. That narrative cannot impact you until the seeds of the idea is first introduced to you. Then you choose to accept it or reject it. The power of perception and belief are very powerful things. Often it is more powerful than actual truth, and if placed in the wrong hands, can do much harm. The power of fear and the perception of a threat can have lingering, long-term consequences. So, the question that I would ask you is this. Are you conscious cause or are you effect? Do you easily succumb to groupthink? Or do you practice independent critical thinking? Do you question and challenge old concepts? Do you practice healthy skepticism? Even with what I'm sharing with you now, are you taking the time to see, to feel if it resonates with you? I hope so. For therein lies your true power, the power to choose what you will accept and what you will not accept, the power to choose your next thought. Now, I'd like to talk briefly about how fear impacts one's spiritual and religious beliefs. As a child, I grew up going to an Episcopal Christian church. When I was very young, I remember having a basic internal conflict with the concept of being a God-fearing person. I felt in my core that these two words put together were in direct conflict with one another. I was told that the meaning of it was more of reverence and obedience to God, but I still had trouble with why those two words were put together in the first place. It was a direct contradiction to my notion that God is love. And if that is the case, then what do I need to fear? I later came to understand that the term God-fearing was designed by early clergy as a type of control mechanism to invoke obedience. Anyway, I personally reject this notion and only work from the premise and belief of all that is love. God energy is love energy. They are the same. On a side note, I also discovered later in my spiritual journey that the idea of reincarnation was actually a part of the early Christian doctrine. There was Origen of Alexandria, circa 185 to 254, who was an influential early Christian theologian and scholar. He is thought by some to be an early proponent of reincarnation, though there is some controversy as to whether or not this is true. The truth is, we're not sure, since a lot of his writings were either incomplete or unavailable. A more compelling figure in early Christian history was Carpocrates, a 2nd century Gnostic thinker and teacher from Alexandria, Egypt, who believed in the transmigration of souls, a concept similar to reincarnation. He taught that human souls could escape the material realm by experiencing all earthly conditions, thus breaking the cycle of reincarnation and returning to the divine. This ongoing debate over reincarnation in early Christianity largely ended in about 553 AD by the Second Council of Constantinople, when the works of those advocating for reincarnation were eventually banned. Not because it was untrue, but I suspect because it was inconvenient. But yes, there was a time when reincarnation was there for a while. Many religions, particularly those originating in India, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, believe in reincarnation. Additionally, some groups like Judaism and certain pagan religions also hold belief in reincarnation, while most Abrahamic religions do not. I would only say that for myself, working with clients in my QHHT hypnosis practice has shown me the absolute veracity and validity of this experience, at least from a space-time perspective. But I do digress. Back to the notion of fear in religion. It would seem to me that motivation for its use primarily lies in religious institutions using it for a means of control, emphasizing consequences for not adhering to beliefs or practices. It helps to maintain authority, promote adherence through threats of things like eternal damnation or social ostracism. In my humble opinion, that is no way to live. Again, your beliefs create your reality. So I ask you one more time, are you conscious cause or are you effect? I hope you will exercise your critical thinking skills to ascertain whether this traditional mindset is working for you or not. If so, fine. If not, then perhaps this is an opportunity for you to ask your God self, your higher self, what is true and not true? And how can you become more open to its loving communication? This brings us to the question of how we can begin to awaken to the higher ideals of our true spiritual selves, the part of us that has full awareness of our spiritual connection to all that is, but in this physical form is having trouble remembering what this arrangement is all about. How do we establish a clear connection between our higher self and our human mind? Well, it might be helpful to understand that as a physical human being, we are only using an infinitesimally small percentage of our actual divine consciousness and energy to have experience in this 3D reality. As a thought experiment, imagine it as an inverted, upside down iceberg where the small tip is our physical experience, but the hidden mass underwater is our true identity. Not only that, but the water that it is immersed in is the direct connection to all that is itself. The ice and the water are the same, but at different frequencies. Now, from a hierarchical perspective, we have a higher self. Let's call it soul. We have the physical brain. Let's call it the CPU, as in central processing unit, like a computer. We can also call it a transceiver, because it is transmitting and receiving information. Then we have the ego and physical mind. This is the part that perceives our experiences and formulates our individual personality. Within this hierarchical mechanism, the issue quickly becomes, especially with the ego, who is the boss in this scenario? We may think we, the person, is running the show, but in truth, we more often than not get in our own way. Anyone who creates, whether it be in writing, music composition, painting, or even entrepreneurship, understands this potential dilemma. However, once you understand the sequence of events in the experiential nature of creation in process, things begin to flow much smoother. When in complete synchronicity, it should run something like this. The higher mind or higher self is the origin of creation and inspiration, who forms and develops the idea, plan, and or notion of what to do and how to create. It is the originator or the mastermind. The original inspiration is then transmitted to the brain, which receives the information and converts the higher frequency into a more seamless translation of understanding, ensuring seamless communication between the higher self and the physical mind. It processes and transmutes the input from the higher mind into a translatable signal that can be properly interpreted by the physical mind. Finally, we come to the physical mind, which gathers and interprets the sensory information from the higher self and through the brain, creating a clearer understanding, comprehension of the world. Please keep in mind one very important aspect to this process: free will. As the part of you actually experiencing this process in physical form, you have the authority to accept or reject this divine inspiration. And through the ego, do it your way. Good luck with that. But don't worry. Your higher self has utmost patience and will allow you to go completely over a cliff if this is what you actually choose to do. The question will always be, did you learn the lesson? What might be helpful in surrendering to your higher self is to know that it is in fact you. It will always have your back. Not only that, but the higher self can see and interpret things in ways that you simply cannot fathom in physical awareness. It has the 10,000-foot view with eagle eyes to see where the opportunities and pitfalls may be. It operates beyond time and is always trying to communicate this information to you. But because of the misunderstanding of internal leadership through the ego filter, we often miss it or don't listen. While this higher mind communication can sometimes come in linear expressions, it most often comes in the form of mental impressions, pictures, and one of my personal favorites, symbols. Always remember, everything is spiritual. There is nothing that is not spiritual. Everything is symbolic. There is nothing that does not have a symbolic, spiritual meaning behind it. The question becomes, are you paying attention to the messages that you are constantly receiving? If you are not, then perhaps you are simply ignoring the messages, the opportunities, and if you continue in this way long enough, your higher self no longer tries so hard because you're not listening anyway. But guess what? You can change that by surrendering to your higher self, by understanding that you have a multi-dimensional existence and are so much greater than the experience you are having or the life that you are currently living. Again, you are a divine spiritual being. You were meant to awaken to your true self. Allow it. Find quiet. Be still. Embrace the love of all that is within you. Begin to love yourself unconditionally. Ask for help from your higher self. It will listen. Then pay attention to synchronicity. Now, what is that again? It is a meaningful coincidence. By the way, there is no such thing as coincidence. That convey messages or guidance from the universe, suggesting that events are interconnected in a purposeful way. Now pay attention to them. Act on them. Take things as far as you can until you can do no more with it. Then turn it over to your higher self to provide you with next steps. Most importantly, release fear and worry. Don't be so caught up in the outcome. Just enjoy the ride. You may be going through old karmic patterns at the moment, but they will pass and be replaced by the new energies that you are projecting. Stay in the now. Be in the present moment. Choose joy. Choose love, gratitude, abundance, and other terms as your ongoing thought patterns. Remember, you can choose those without having to have an external reason for these thoughts and feelings. Practice forgiveness. That's a huge one. If necessary, repeat these charged words as mantras to internalize and activate the feelings of what they are. My sister Betty and I have actually collaborated on a personal slogan of empowerment. We affectionately call it LJAG. LJAG is simply the acronym for LJAG, which stands for love, joy, abundance, and gratitude. I even wrote a song about it entitled I Choose. We both use it as a mantra whenever our thoughts are less of a higher state than we would like. It helps to bring our state of mind back to more loving practices, a higher vibrational intention. Again, you don't have to have an external reason to feel these feelings. Just repeat them internally or out loud. Even visualize what these words may represent to you, so as to invoke an emotional resonance. Do it as often as you need to. Then move forward with your day in a higher, positive state of being. Rinse and repeat. One last thing that I want to mention to you about fear. As it relates to spirituality, if there is ever a moment when you are curious about your next spiritual lesson, what your next spiritual lesson may be, simply ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Therein lies your next potential opportunity for spiritual growth. Finally, I want to restate and reemphasize something that I shared with you in our last episode. And that is, you are in actuality not learning anything new, but are remembering what you already know as a spiritual being. We're just reigniting the memory so that you can proceed from this moment on, more and more aware and conscious of your true nature, more and more taking charge of your life and becoming your own master. This is the time that we are now in. This is the jumpstart for a new existence, a new reality. We'll be talking more about these and other topics in our future installments. And if there's anything that you would like for me to discuss, please feel free to mention it by leaving a question or comment. As always, If you have found any of the information helpful or enlightening, please like, subscribe, and share with others. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this ride. And always remember, if we are one, let's all live in peace, love, and joy.